Okay, so mobility is about getting from A to B, right? And to do that, you need the Holy Trinity. You need the three things. You need a map, and you need a navigation system, and you need an address. You need to understand where A and B are. And there have been dramatic increases in the sophistication of maps and navigation, real-time satellite imagery, crowdsourced traffic. But the problem is, addressing hasn't changed for hundreds of years. And actually, the world is really badly addressed when you think about it. Talking about location is really challenging. So the UN say that 75% of the countries in the world don't have a well-maintained street addressing system. They don't have postcodes, house numbers, zip codes, any of that sort of stuff. And actually, in the other 25% of the countries that do have decent street addressing, it's still pretty poor, and it's costly and it's frustrating. So coming here on Monday, I typed in the LA Convention Center. The pin dropped in the center of the LA Convention Center. It took me about 5 minutes to kind of wander around and find exactly where I was meant to be going. Now you think of that in terms of an autonomous vehicle. It's going to drive through the middle of the convention center. Can we advance the slide? There we go. I get into my car in London. I type in Church Road. It says, which of the 19 different church roads in London would you like to go to? So we talk about autonomous vehicles and voice navigation, and yet the addressing systems that we have at the moment are just not good enough. So that 5 minutes I spent wandering around, actually, people from the UK spend 22 million hours a year lost whilst they're abroad. It's the number one cause of arguments when you're traveling. If UPS can stop their drivers getting lost just by a little bit, it represents a huge amount of money. So 1 mile per driver per day is a $50 million saving. And the number one issue in new cars bought is voice recognition. Number 5 is navigation. So the world isn't just set up to do this correctly. You could drop a pin, but try and tell someone a pin over the telephone or face-to-face or writing it down, it just can't work. And that's because it's GPS coordinates. Fantastically accurate, much more accurate than street addressing, much more universal than street addressing. But people aren't programmed to memorize these and to communicate these. You can make slight errors and you end up totally in the wrong place. And so what we've tried to do is come up with a really user-friendly version of coordinates. We have divided the world up into 57 trillion 3-meter by 3-meter squares, and we've given each square a 3-word address. So 3 words to describe any spot on the planet. Words are much easier to remember, they're much easier to communicate, and what we've done in English, we've replicated in 12 other languages as well. So we have a simple algorithm that works offline. You don't need a data connection. It converts GPS coordinates to 3 words and back again. And so that means wherever you are, however remote you are, you can have a very, very simple address. If I search for the stadium in Chicago, the pin drops in the middle. Actually, you can be much more specific about entrances, exits, stuff like that. So this is Pedro. He runs a postal service in the favelas in Brazil. And he uses 3 Portuguese words. So when people check out online, they put in the 3 Portuguese words, and his postmen and postwomen deliver the mail. This is Sizwe. He uses 3 words in the townships in South Africa to deliver prescription medicine. And we're being used in all the places that you would expect that have rubbish addressing. We're being used by the UN, the World Bank, the Red Cross to manage disasters and track diseases. We're also being used much closer to home. Apparently you have a type of rugby, American football, something like that, we were used there to coordinate the security response around the stadiums, because shouting a lat long over a field radio in a crisis situation is really, really challenging. So they used 3 words instead. There's 57,000 fire hydrants in Denver that now have 3-word addresses, because it's a unique identifier as well as a locator. In fact, companies around the world that have difficulty being found are now adding 3-word addresses to their Contact Us pages. And we're being built into mobility apps. So NavMe is the world's largest offline navigation app. You can type in a 3-word address, it will recognize it, and it will give you turn-by-turn directions to that specific spot. Or TripGo is a city planning app. Same thing, it will take you to a 3-word address. And we're being built into apps and services around the world. We've got our own app, but we've also got code that people are using. Finnish company, Caroom, now allow you to locate parking spots around the city with 3 Finnish words. There's a taxi company in Delhi, horrendously addressed country. Women-only drivers for women-only passengers, and they use 3-word addresses to minimize the amount of time that women spend on the street so they can get picked up and dropped off in the right places. Earlier this year, we signed a deal with the Mongolian Post Office, and they use 3 Mongolian words to deliver letters to their largely nomadic population. So we're on a bit of a mission. The world is really badly addressed. We want to make the world more efficient, less frustrating, and a much safer place. And we believe with 3 words, 3-word addressing, we can do that and make it easy for you to get from A to B, no matter where that might be. A short film to play.
Great. Thank you to all of you. I have a couple questions, and then I think we're going to take some questions from the audience. But I'd like to ask all 4 of you to answer the question, can in-vehicle systems keep up with the innovation and instantaneous speed of market of the smartphone apps? How are you going to keep up with that in your various businesses?
And I think based on the hardware that we have in the vehicles, there is always a constant challenge to have the newest technologies in the core. We have been working faster development processes now, so that we are very close to what we see in the smartphone market, for example, with some of the vehicle systems. However, because vehicles are driving typically 10 years or longer on the road, it's going to be a challenge to have a 10-year-old vehicle up to date with the newest technologies. Software-wise, it will happen. So the reflash capabilities will be everywhere in a very short time. However, the hardware limitations is still a challenge. There may be opportunities where you can modularize the components and then buy faster processing power, but the logistics of that and all the verification tests that has to appear before this is enabled is still a challenge for the automotive industry. So we will become faster, software updates will happen, but we will never be exactly at the same level.
I think the plug and play is a good component, because once you buy the car with a navigation system, unless there's opportunities for you to pull it out, update it, get it on, people are still going to use their phones. But Kip, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that it continues to be and will continue to be an issue from a hardware standpoint, but things are moving faster. But what I would say is that at least from a software feature standpoint and from a content standpoint, some of the things that I talked about, both with more frequent updates of software, not just maps, as well as some features that once existed in the car existing in the cloud, those features can then be updated at any time, right? And so features can evolve, content can evolve over time at a much more rapid pace than it has in the past. So we'll see a big change where that comes from. And the other thing to keep in mind, which I'm sure people say a lot, which is that what exists in the car has to be much more reliable and dependable than what has to exist in the consumer electronics environment. So I think that's probably obvious, but I think that the opportunities to update software over time are certainly going to be enabled with some of those
You have a
cloud-based.
higher level of responsibility for sure in the car.
Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah?
Well, it is absolutely a challenge, the smartphone, the pace of innovation compared to embedded systems in the vehicle. For all of us in the, let's say, traditional automotive industry. So in that sense, TomTom is a bit of an odd company because we are both in the consumer space and the automotive industry. So the only way to actually cope with the challenge against, let's say, Apple CarPlay and Google Android Auto coming in, including Waze, is to fix the problem of the embedded systems in terms of having a proper integration of functionality, also including ADAS functionality, including things like you presented on hybrid navigation, doing it right for the end user with the right end user experience. And that also requires, I think, that in the traditional automotive industry, software is developed in a different way compared to the past. Less the V-cycle and more the agile way of developing software and decoupling software from the hardware. And I talk now about the context of navigation, infotainment systems. The whole thing will change again when we move towards autonomous driving, because then the role of the smartphone will completely change compared to this traditional space. So then the smartphone becomes something different to the car than what it is now in terms of challenging through Google Android Auto and Apple CarPlay.
So I think we see that when we talk to more traditional car manufacturers. We talk to a number of them. The kind of the time it takes to get into to get into a car is phenomenal. Whereas you talk to people who come from the software and the app side, and they build us in an afternoon. I think there's a kind of big mindset shift between actually we need to kind of fail fast, move forward, innovate, trial, error, and kind of move on and innovate, versus some of the more traditional kind of ways of getting it perfect, putting it to market.
I think if I was out in the boondocks, I'd want to use what3words, because there may not be a Google Maps out there. I'm going to take, I don't know how much more time we have. I have one more question, but I'd rather hear from the audience. I'm sure. Sir,
Hey,
would you
thank
identify yourself and your question?
Sure. My name is John Parsons. I'm a VP of Engineering at Nobility. We're a software development company right here in Southern California. And Ann, I'm like you. When I get in the car, the most important thing after the car key is Waze, and TomTom and Garmin and all these great products over the years. I love you guys. So my question is this, though. All the focus seems to be on the idea of the convenience features. I'm driving to grandma's house. Where can I get food along the way? It's kind of a hard thing to ask, but all of these technologies are very siloed. Are there any standards to glue this together in the case of an emergency, like a natural disaster, if we had an earthquake, tornado, maybe a terrorist attack? I don't know if my Waze drivers out there are going to be tapping for the right icon or saving their butt if something really urgent's happening. So is there anything that's in the works as an industry standard, or anything that somebody out there is curating this in real time so that it gets me away from the trouble instead of notices the 110 just opened up and sends me to the center of it?
Who likes to take that one?
Well, yeah, as far as I know, there's not a real standard being developed for catastrophes like mentioned by you, but the answer to it is having a proper system of real-time information in place, using car sensor data, using community input, and using more traditional sources like government sources, for instance, and combine all of that, fuse it in an intelligent way, and deliver back a real-time service to the customer, being you in that case. That's, I think, the only answer to it. And when you have a quality service that works, then I think you will not be driven into this earthquake, you will be driven away from it.
Fantastic.
May I just add one aspect as you referenced Waze? What I showed with the eHorizon is an automatic system that leverages sensors in the core that will automatically trigger information. With Waze today, you still need to rely on, is there enough Wazers around that push the button? Do they really push the button? So it's, in our opinion, a higher probability in the end to leverage most of the cars running around with their automated systems to provide such type of information that can be used.
So we see a lot of that because we're used in disaster zones. And every country's got a very different addressing system. Most of the apps have a slightly different way of referring to a location. And so having a set of standards for addressing would certainly help that. And the intention is that a system like ours kind of allows anybody from wherever they are on whatever device to have a single way to talk about it.
Great. Any other questions? I have one. Any out there? It's hard to see. Over here? So what will navigation look like in the future? We've been talking about this, but especially I'm interested in with the emergence of V2V and V2I. You know, a good example of V2V is there a car slams out its brakes, and does it send out a signal to those behind it, you know, watch out, I'm putting my brakes on. And then V2I, of course, would be where the traffic signal communicates to the cars that the green light is about to turn to yellow and they need to slow down. One of my big customers is the city of Los Angeles, and they have sensors all over the entire infrastructure of Los Angeles is censored. So it's interesting to me how the navigations will hook into the V2V or the V2I.
Yeah. Basically, as I said before, the vehicle will have to rely on various channels to communicate to the outside world. V2V, DSRC is a technology that is heavily promoted. It's not yet there. Cellular connections is going to be standard in all new cars very soon in the US and in many other countries as well. I was talking about Wi-Fi. So basically, I think we need to leverage all available technologies as an industry, be it from vehicle to vehicle, be it to some type of infrastructure to get as many data out of the car and into the car as possible.